Welcome, everyone, to the Indie Reds podcast. I'm your host, Joe Dilling. With me tonight, Brian Smith and Boback Lotfalia makes his triumphant return. But before we get too started, I wanted to apologize to everybody that we've missed the first two matches. I had a kind of little personal issue to address the first week of the season, and then we had some scheduling conflicts and miscommunications last week. So we apologize for missing. Now it's after the third match, and it's our first podcast of the season. So we're going to do our best to keep these gaps to a minimum. They will happen from time to time because, as we all know, life happens and gets in the way. These aren't our full-time jobs, so we just do the best that we can. But let's go ahead and get started. On this episode, Bryan and Boback are going to tell me why I'm wrong. We're going to chat a bit about the Arsenal match, and then we're going to look forward. But before we get started, Brian, are you enjoying a great beer this evening?
I am. I'm having one of my favorite beers on the planet, and it's one that's kind of difficult to get. I was had a family member bring some down for me from Wisconsin, and why don't you guess what it is?
No, you already told me. If it's from Wisconsin, it has to be a New Glarus.
It is from New Glarus, but it's not the spotted cow that everybody thinks.
Okay.
It's not PBR. It's also from Wisconsin. That's not a bad guess.
Oh, is it Milwaukee's
Serendipity
Best?
Tonight. It's fantastic.
Serendipity. All right. I jumped in there.
It's better than that.
All right.
Yeah, it's better than that.
Boback, are you having a beer as well, or a tasty beverage of some sort?
I just cracked open a Taxman Blackberry Citrus Spinoff Sour Saison.
Oh, I'm big on the sours, and I am having a Shorts Brewery Melt My Brain, handcrafted by people who care. So make sure that you get out and try some of this. It's the favorite beer of the podcast, as well as the Anfield Wrap.
I have some of those in my fridge as well.
Oh, tasty. I think it's seasonal, right, guys?
I'm not sure.
I think it might be seasonal, and
I think it is. I'm not sure.
So get out to your local Kroger or favorite liquor store of choice and buy as much as you can, because it's going to be a bit before it comes around. But also, it's Marzen season's popping up as well. So, yes, we're excited for that. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right in. Then,
Joe, before you get started,
yeah, sure, man.
I'm just saying that it's good that we've got all these sour beers. Yours isn't particularly sour, but we got some other sours going, and you love the sours. Very indicative of Arsenal's fan base, but I'm sure we'll get to that.
We definitely will. Oh, man. All right. So, pre-Arsenal match, it's, I'll be first to admit I was a little nervous, and there was quite a few different things going on. So Arsenal has, they've won narrowly in the first two matches. They didn't really play anybody spectacular, but, looking at its early season, but it was a 1-2 match. Arsenal spent pretty big in the summer, brought in Nicolas Pepe, got David Luiz off of Chelsea, make of that what you will, and made some other signings as well. And then we had some things kind of stacking up against us. Alisson Becker was injured. The defenses looked less than perfect, which we can talk about a little bit as well. And I thought the front three, while they've been scoring goals, I think there were some times that they might have just been trying too hard or whatever, and we just weren't clicking yet, and were misfiring as well. And the midfield had been a little lackluster, aside from at least one good half from Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. I thought that, Fabinho did his role, but I thought Wijnaldum might have been a little lacking, as well as Henderson at times. Milner when he was in there as well. So, guys, I was nervous. I was thinking maybe it was going to be a 3-3 draw at Anfield. We hadn't lost at Anfield in a long time, but me, I worry and I get nervous about things. So, Brian, I'll let you start telling me why I'm wrong or was wrong.
Well, we traded some messages back and forth, and in hindsight, maybe I got lucky, but I wasn't particularly nervous about the match. We have owned Arsenal recently, especially at Anfield, something like 22 goals in the 6 games at Anfield leading up to this one. So for several years we've dominated, especially the last couple of years. I know they spent big and they've got some good players, but I wasn't that worried about it. I didn't think Arsenal was going to, try to play a super attacking game or start three forwards or what have you. And maybe I got lucky with that. Lacazette didn't start and they weren't particularly set up to attack a whole lot. But I wasn't worried about it. I thought we would win. I said in some messages back and forth that we would win. And it turns out I was right. I understand what you were getting at, but I wasn't too terribly worried about it going into the match. So what do you think, Boback, heading in? Were you worried about it or?
No, if anything, I was just super excited about it. Like you had mentioned, generally every time we play Arsenal, there's goals in it. I think they said something about the last 11 matches we played. There's been an average of 4.5 goals a game. So, I knew it was going to be extremely high scoring. I did have a little bit of concern with our defense. I thought we would leak some goals, but I was pretty confident that we would win. Especially at Anfield. Joe had mentioned we haven't lost at Anfield in quite some time. In the league, I think it's been almost 2 full years since we lost at Anfield. I think it's in the 40 some odd matches. So, I mean, that's an incredible record. And just in general, losing period, we haven't lost a Premier League game since City in January of this year. So, we have a phenomenal home record and a phenomenal record in general in the Premier League. So all that kind of just led up to I guess maybe an arrogance, but it was a warranted arrogance.
Bryan, last time we spoke, there was a noisy Arsenal fan last week. Was that noisy Arsenal fan present for the match?
No, he was not, and that was a little disappointing. I mean, it's really great when a middle school ultra grows up and picks a club to support. We missed him, and it would have been nice to watch us take a 3-0 lead inside the first hour with him there. So, but he wasn't there.
All right. So let's go ahead and get started talking about the match. A little bit with my analysis. Unai Emery tries to catch Liverpool from off guard. He starts with a diamond midfield, one which we hadn't seen anything on tape apparently, and Pepe up top, and not a lot of tape on him at Arsenal and how he would play with that midfield, especially in the diamond shape. A lot of talk that maybe since Pepe was starting, they were going to start with a top three. Watched a little bit of Arsenal Fan TV, and we'll get to that a little bit later, but they were mentioning that they maybe heard something about maybe a slight knock to Lacazette. But, that's something that it looked like Klopp was going to be prepared for. There we go. There's my notes. All right, so in my opinion, I think Emery made a mistake on the formation. What is your take on how Liverpool adapted to the beginning, Boback?
I don't think Liverpool really had to adapt to anything. I think Klopp kind of went into that game knowing how Emery would set up, and frankly, I don't think he goes into a game at Anfield, aside from playing City, concerned about how the other team's going to set up. I mean, obviously, he sets his team up to get the best out of them, but I don't think there was really much surprise to him. He had even said in his pre-match press conference on the day before that he expected both Xhaka and Pepe to start, which those were the two that had just come into the team that day. So It's almost like he called Emery's bluff. I don't know if that means he's spying like Bielsa, but he didn't seem to be too surprised. And then the way that they had set up, they went straight, 2 banks of 5, which I've never seen an Arsenal team do, ever in my lifetime. You've got Arsenal fans and pundits that may have been begging for that to come about in some of these big games sometimes, and maybe set themselves up a little bit more defensive so they're not run off the park so early. But it was almost like we were playing a mid-table side the way that they'd set up. They came to counter us. They played 2 fast forwards up front, and they They tried, even though they started 4 in the midfield, they essentially bypassed the midfield by cranking balls into the corner and trying to have them run onto it.
Yeah.
Their few chances that they had in the first half where they were dangerous were off of long balls or giveaways. Henderson's in particular, the one that led to Pepe's breakaway, but they were all long balls that either Adrian made a mistake in coming out for, or that mistake that Henderson had by instead of trying to clear the ball, he tried to bring it down.
Yeah.
So, just the too few lapses in judgment led to 2 chances, and that's about all I really remember of them being that threatening.
A lot of times from what I saw, was especially with that diamond, the diamond, they, like you said, they did draw back and defend a lot, but when they'd go forward, that diamond would stretch out, but that is so narrow. It's such a narrow formation. It was just giving Trent and Andy Robertson space upon space upon space, and you can't. I mean, it's like you're playing the 2 best fullbacks in the league, and you're going to give them that kind of space. It just doesn't make any sense. But despite that, it was only 1-0 at halftime, and we scored off of a set piece. We'll get to it a little bit later, but Klopp makes a halftime adjustment. Trent even brought it up after the game, and it turned out to be the difference. But let's get back to Arsenal real quick. Jim watches a lot more of Ligue 1 than I think anybody I know. And this is like really the first time I'd seen Pepe, and man, he is fast. And I think he's got a future, and he's going to probably bang a few goals in this season. Did it look like he was really worrying our defense, Brian? Our defense was worried about him, or he was making them look foolish at all?
He had a couple chances, and the counterattack. That's really what they were doing. They were defending, giving us the wide space, and we were cranking balls in. And it's tough to. I was getting a little frustrated that all the crosses were thrown in, they were just being cleared so easily. But it's really tough to put in a cross, even with our terrific wing backs or whatever you want to call them. Hell, they're not fullbacks; they're freaking wingers and midfielders, pretty much. They got 9 guys in the box. It's kind of hard to find somebody's head. But they countered well. I didn't see much of a diamond really. It was like a 5-man midfield. It was almost like a 4-5-1. They had 3 defensive mids out there. It was really, really weird. It's almost like Arsenal didn't watch any tape of our first 2 games because Norwich attacked us a little bit, and Southampton did as well, and they created chances.
Yeah,
and Arsenal didn't do that. Arsenal tried to defend and then run to the other end as fast as they possibly can, and just kick it as long as they can. They must have been watching like Send It videos or something. I don't know what they were doing, but they did create a couple of chances, but it wasn't because we were necessarily worried about them or that they were, performing well or that we got anything wrong. I agree with what Boback said. We've won or unbeaten at Anfield for so long in this league. We just set up our team and we throw them out there, and this is our best team. That's our Champions League final team, other than Allison, right? So. Yep. That's our best team. We're at Anfield. We're going to play the way we play. I think Arsenal made mistakes, playing so defensively and just trying to counter. Now, Pepe, I agree, is a good player. He's fast. I think he's a little bit too left-footed. He had a couple chances where he could have went with his right, especially that one that Adrian saved. But they have good players. They're going to have some chances, and our defense hasn't been spectacular. It's been certainly good enough. No clean sheets yet, but first half we kind of dominated and didn't have a ton of chances, but they just set out to defend. I think they were thrilled, with almost getting to 0-0 at halftime, and probably not too disappointed in the 1-0, even though the goal came late. But Arsenal wasn't pretty. They'll be okay, but not playing like that. That was I don't know. It was just strange. It was an ugly first half from them.
I think Unai Emery set it up all wrong. Even their kicks out from the back, instead of even trying to go long from the back, they played it out wide off of like goal kicks. And then immediately Bobby, Mane, Wijnaldum were right there pressuring them, and their defenders were freaking out and were about there ready to win the ball again. It was just he really set it up wrong. He didn't play it right. Arsenal fans really weren't clamoring for that, at least what I saw on Arsenal Fan TV. But, man, that had to have been scary for him. I mean, anywhere they turn, they've got someone in their face. Whether it's whether it's Bobby, Mo, Mane, Jenny Wijnaldum, Jordan Henderson, or Billy from down the street, straight off of Anfield Road. You know, I mean, they turn and they're looking right smack dab in the face of those fans, and and man, they're yelling and screaming too. So you know, it's just, yeah, they really looked unsettled and unprepared, especially coming off of goal kicks. Brian, was I just imagining things, or do you tend to agree with that?
No, I think you're right. They liked playing those little goal kicks, but they were playing them almost towards their own corner flag, as you mentioned, and that's just kind of that just invites us to do what we do so well, especially with Firmino clicking and then all our other guys to kind of clean up the messes when they happen. If teams do that against us, you know, we're going to put up 4 or 5 or 6 against somebody that tries to pull that off and can't really pull it off. So Arsenal got away with it, but mostly because of their long ball craziness, they were just kind of thumping it out of there. And you know, they've got some big players that can win some headers here and there. Aubameyang's one of them, and you know, for a while they had more players in midfield than we did, but not a good way to play against us, to play little sideways square balls on goal kicks and just try to wing it from there and short passes, triangles, back passes. They're just not smart.
One of regular listeners to the pod will know that one of my guilty pleasures is after we beat Arsenal, I love to go on and watch Arsenal fan TV from the match. And I was kind of disappointed. I'm not going to lie, but there was no big freakouts. There wasn't any like, oh, we need to get rid of Unai Emery. He's disaster. I don't ever want to see Granit Xhaka again. I mean, I didn't see any of that. It was pretty disappointing for me. And actually, in all reality, they seemed to be rather complimentary of Liverpool. And even though they were a bit jaded, like for instance, you know, they expected that Aubameyang would have that his offsides by at least a good 2 yards would have stood if it had been because they didn't raise the flag. But I think they just let it go, and then they were going to have VAR pick it up. But I mean, it would have been offsides. But did either of you guys watch any of Arsenal fan TV? I'll start with you, Boback.
I had just caught a clip of someone that retweeted. It was that one of the jokers that normally contributes to that video was going on and on and on about how they did it, as in like it was a massive accomplishment that they scored a goal. And he was like, oh, they were talking about how we couldn't do it, but we did it. And Robbie, the host, was more along the lines of but they won the game.
Yeah,
and
it was
almost like he was confused. Neck, right? Yeah, he was almost like he was confused that you know, whoever scores the most goals in the game actually wins it, not whoever scores last. Yeah. And they were a bit confused, and I guess that was probably the one like potential Arsenal fan TV retweetable moment, but you know, I don't really pay much attention to anything else.
I love seeing it. I mean, but DT was tame. He's usually fired up. Troops was really tame, and he's the one that's always like, understand blood. That's my Troops impression. But anyway, yeah, they all just kind of really seem tame. Brian, did you catch anything?
I don't know any of those people's names, so
was it
I've seen bits and pieces here. Like, you know, somebody will grab a 10-second clip and, you know, throw it on Twitter or something like that, and I'll watch and have a laugh about it. I know the one that Boback was talking about, and that was funny. He was talking about the arrogance of the Liverpool supporters and, you know, this and that, and you know, that was just kind of silly. And the host, I don't even know the host name.
It's Robbie.
Robbie, yeah, and Boback said it. So yeah, I already forgotten his name. Yeah, Robbie's like, yeah, but we still lost the game. And the guy's like, well, you know, if we could do the same thing against City, you know, this Liverpool team came really close last year and we scored against them. Yeah, well, we lost the game. You know, it's just, I don't know if that was just completely staged or what. It's just weird. I know they have a reputation for some over the top, and you know, can be entertaining at times, both for Arsenal supporters and for rival supporters, but. I don't know. It's just weird. I wonder how much of that is staged, and and how much of that is legitimate. But they do have some fans that will go crazy sometimes, and I've seen bits and pieces of that. But I don't know their names, but I will have a laugh at them every now and then.
You're right, and I saw that video too. Oh, that was fun. But yeah, one of the best points that they said was, we're where we ought to be. Liverpool is playing at a different level. They just won the Champions League. They're looking at winning the league. We're just looking at getting into the Champions League. And I thought that was kind of a fair assessment of kind of where Arsenal is this season and where Liverpool's at this season. So I'm done talking about Arsenal. Let's talk about the team that we love, guys. I thought that it was a great game, a great team game, particularly the second half. We had space down the wings, and we were pinging balls in. The problem was they were packing the box. And like we had talked about before, you have those tall guys in there, and it's Bobby and Mo and Mane. They're not going to win a lot of headers against David Luiz and Socrates. So, halftime adjustments were made. Trent talked about it a little bit. If you hadn't picked it up yet, he said that they cut together some video and showed them, look, you guys have all this space. You're not going to be successful swinging in high crosses. Try to play it low. That's where we're going to get it. And sure enough, push comes to shove. Trent puts a nice ball into Bobby. Bobby has a nice little flick. Mo's about ready to run onto it and score, but David Luiz grabs his jersey and pulls him back. Penalty, and it was one of the best penalties I think I've ever seen. I don't know if I've ever seen somebody do that finesse shot R1 and shoot on the PlayStation controller up into the top 90 on a pen, and it bends it. Holy cow, watching it on replay, it gave me a heart attack, but live there was just so much force behind it. I mean, it was in the net, and we knew it was in the net. Arsenal players, and even David Luiz himself was like, "Hey, that's just the way I play," and VAR is gonna ruin us or whatever. He grabbed the jersey and pulled. Is there anything really to debate on that? Boback, you had some stuff we talked a little bit about online a little bit. You want to talk about this shirt pull?
I watched what he had to say. I watched his comments. I think he was kind of, commenting about how that was just kind of an instinctual thing. It was obviously dumb because it resulted in the penalty. He had a little bit to say about how, he implied that Mo had spoke to him and told him that he didn't even feel it. Something of that nature, which I think was pretty ridiculous. Mo obviously said something to him at the end of the game and covered his mouth like they do now so that they don't catch him on the cameras. But, I think it probably just had something more along the lines to say, about how he didn't think it was going to be a penalty, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't a penalty. He just didn't think it was going to be one. He's been tossed around and tripped and kicked and all kinds of business for years and years in the Premier League and hasn't gotten his penalties. And so, that's an understandable opinion. Mm-hmm. Me personally, I think, there is the possibility that wouldn't have been called last year.
Now so blatant though.
It was extremely blatant, but I think, nowadays referees, have to consider what it's going to, the egos involved with a lot of these top end, high end referees is so high that they don't want their call overturned.
Yeah.
And so for them to say that it's not a penalty, and then, the VAR review team look at it and be like, listen, that's plain as day. That's a penalty. Then it'd make him look stupid. So he's going to call that, even if he's 50-50 about whether or not it's a penalty. You had mentioned I had mentioned something on the internet today. It's more about how they use it in the Premier League, and the FA has always been huge about the Premier League being refereed different, and everyone views the Premier League being refereed different. That they want to do VAR different now too. So it's not meant to re-referee the game. It's meant to be a clear and obvious error. the referee's not even supposed to go look at the video screen. It's supposed to be something so blatantly that they missed that they just overturned the call in the VAR room. Something like that would be, you could see it on, I don't know if it was the time where we had that camera that was like 600 feet up because they lost the normal TV feed. But, I mean, you could see that from miles away. It was like, watching it from the Goodyear blimp. But, I don't think there can't be a whole lot of debate. Normally they make a big showing of even something that might be 75-25 penalty, no penalty on these post-game shows, and they have a debate. And I don't ever remember anyone even talking about it.
No, I mean, they did a little bit about how stupid Luis was for doing it, but more so about him getting skinned, at least on Match of the Day. I did find a feed for Match of the Day. I enjoy watching that every once in a while. But we'll get there later. But yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, Ian Wright was just saying. I mean, Ian Wright just flat out said he had no reason to talk about this. It was a penalty. It was hands down. You grabbed the shirt and you pulled. The one thing that we are seeing a lot of people talk about is, well, why aren't they calling it on corner kicks? I think about on the one that Matip scored. Would we have gotten a penalty call because Socrates was grabbing and pulling and pushing Virgil van Dijk down, and he's going down and he's looking right at the ref going, what the heck, you're allowing this? But you see it normally on corner kicks. They allow it, but they're not going to do it there. So does anybody have anything they want to talk about in the difference between the two?
I think there's a huge difference. You're talking about the Matip's goal when Luis was, all over Virgil, right?
I thought it was Socrates, but yeah.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
somebody was all over him. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was Socrates. So, one of the differences is, well, first of all, the shirt pull is a definite penalty. I mean, he pulled that shirt so hard he could autograph it. It was.
He denied a goal scoring opportunity. That's why he got the yellow card. I mean, seriously.
There it is. That's exactly right. Mo's about to shoot the ball with his right foot, and no one's in position to block it. Nobody else can get to the ball but him. No defender can get there in time. Goalkeeper can't cover it. It's Salah's ball under control, and he's about to shoot. And you yank his jersey that hard like that, it's a penalty. And for him to suggest that Mo told him that he didn't even feel the shirt pull is...
They were on the same team at Chelsea. They were just chatting with each other.
Yeah, that's completely stupid, because if he didn't feel it, why did he stop running? He just chose to stop running, hoping that something had happened? I mean, it makes no sense. It really is dumb. I kind of wish Salah was a little more outspoken or a little more active on social media or what have you, because they should just rip him to shreds for that. There's no reason for Salah to not take another step and bury that far post with his right foot, or maybe high near post, except he was yanked back with a shirt. So credit to Salah for not going down and flailing around like Neymar would. So that should be talked about. Secondly, go back and look, and I know you guys have seen it, but listeners, go back and look at the ridiculous touch that Bobby played to put Salah in before he got his shirt ripped off of him.
So good.
It was great touch. So that it's a different situation than the other end when Virgil was being beat on and grabbed and held and pulled and all that, because Matip's going up to put his head to the ball and score. Now if Joel Matip is not there and Virgil's the only guy there, Virgil's trying to jump and head the ball and he's getting fouled like that, we probably would get that call, depending on how forceful it was, or maybe how forceful the foul looked when Virgil went to leap to try to connect the ball with his head. But instead, Matip was there and he just buried it, so that it's really a non-issue. So I think that's the big difference between the two. And when you do have a situation where guys pulling a shirt or holding somebody back or hugging somebody or hand on the shoulder pushing them down or what have you on a set piece or a corner kick, they are calling those as penalties when they should. And the one that Matip buried in the corner for our first goal isn't going to be a penalty, obviously, because we scored on it. But that's the differences I see in the two situations.
Yeah, let's see. Van Dijk was so pissed he wasn't even looking at Matip and didn't realize they had scored. If you go back, there's this one kind of up close camera angle, and he's still complaining to the ref. And then you see Bobby just jumping for joy, and then Virgil realizes hey, we scored. Yeah, all right. But yeah, it was just amazing that wasn't called. But I think you hit the nail on the head though, Brian. If Matip wasn't there and it was Virgil, then maybe we get that call. Maybe they look at it again in VAR, but you have to have somebody question it at some point, and I'm not clear on how that happens. It's not like in the NFL where they throw a challenge flag out there to have them look at it again. Is it the captain can request it or something else? Do either of you guys have an idea, or does the box?
No, it's. I mean, it's.
Hey, let's look at that.
Anything is generally going to be reviewed in those type of situations. So, like, I would imagine if there's some sort of like complaint, like for instance, Virgil complaining about it is going to maybe instigate the center ref to say something. Hey guys, you want to check that out real quick? Something of that nature. That's why I think personally, I slightly disagreeing with Brian here in regards to whether or not if that goes in or doesn't go in, whether or not that'd be called. Just from what I've seen in the Premier League so far, with how they've utilized VAR, is that the center ref is essentially if he sees the incident and he makes a call, they've been sticking by that pretty strictly. Versus, it's almost completely opposite. And when we saw what we saw in the World Cup, what we saw in the Women's World Cup, what we saw in the Champions League, what we see in Bundesliga every week, what we see in the MLS is more along the lines of it doesn't have to be as definite. I think they're almost using VAR, and this is what I had mentioned before. I think they're almost using VAR for things that you just can't catch with your eye, like offside, a handball. Which really the only time they would review a handball is if it was in the box. Like there's really no other reason to review it, because there have been plenty of, even just in the first 3 weeks of the season, plenty of clear-cut penalties that have not been called because the referee made a call on the field and they didn't have, quote, clear and obvious reason to turn it over because it's so subjective, and they want to act like the Premier League is refereed much different than every other league. So this is how we're going to do it. And also you got to think about there's one referee that's the VAR referee. We know how terrible a lot of these Premier League referees are.
Yeah,
it's one man's opinion versus another one, and they're both very egotistical. So say for instance, who's an awful referee off the top of your head?
Michael Dean.
Mike Dean. Okay, so say Michael Oliver is refereeing our match. Probably the best referee in the Premier League.
Yeah.
And he misses something, and Mike Dean is the VAR referee. Do you have confidence that Mike Dean is going to be like, "Hey, Michael, guess what? That's a penalty. You missed it."
Good point.
No. Well, first of all, I don't think Mike Dean can actually referee any of our games because he's from the Liverpool area. But
yeah,
I get your point, and it's funny that you bring up Mike Dean because there was a VAR incident this weekend with City, which I was pleased with the outcome, but it wasn't the right call. David Silva had gotten his foot stomped on and he fell over in the box. It looked like it could have potentially been a dive when you saw it live, but when you saw it on the replay, even in full motion replay, it was obvious he had his foot stomped on and it was a clear penalty. The VAR review team had told him, Mike Dean was the center ref, had told him, hey, it's a penalty. This is what we saw. He stomped on his foot. And Mike Dean, of like ignoring the Premier League protocol and just taking the VAR's word for it, wanted to go see it for himself on the VAR screen and ran over and viewed it. And then he came back and still said that it wasn't a penalty. So, you're going to have this kind of nonsense that still happens in the Premier League with VAR until that initiative changes, until they get away from the clear and obvious verbiage, then we're not going to see the influx of penalties that we thought we might from VAR.
All right, great point. We got to talk about Mo's second goal. He gets a ball coming down the side. David Luiz just gets completely skinned. Looks like a complete fool. Plays it wrong. He knows he's not faster than Mo Salah. Mo just blows by him, slots it past Leno. I mean, it was a beautiful goal. I saw somebody saying goal of the season. I don't know if I'm going there. It's still quite early for that. But just a fabulous goal. And that's going to segue into our man of the match talk. Boback, who is your man of the match?
I mean, it's very difficult to pick one when the team performance was just so good.
Exactly.
Like, it's just kind of one of those situations to where everyone did their job really well. You've got players that obviously stood out because they made the breakthrough plays. For me, obviously Salah getting the 2 goals.
It's hard not to,
puts
right?
puts him up there. Matip had a fantastic game too, but he didn't. To be fair, he didn't have a whole lot to do. He played really well, and he's really making that spot his, making it really difficult to put Joe Gomez back in there.
Yeah,
but we were talking about it at Union Jack. It's like, even with his obnoxious scoring record against Arsenal, if you even just ignore that, Firmino just looked dangerous all game.
Oh, yeah.
He looked like he was going to get one all game, and we were saying it the whole time. We're like, Bobby's going to get one. Bobby's going to get one. Bobby's going to get one, because he was just so good. That silky touch to Mo for the second goal.
Yeah.
He's these first 3 games of the season that he's essentially been a massive part of. He's been our best player in all of those matches, even in games where Mane steals the show or Salah gets 2 goals. You can't ignore what Firmino has done in those games.
Yeah, you really
and
can't.
He's been fantastic. So for me, it's kind of a cop out, but I would pick both of them because I feel like Salah was the most dangerous, but Firmino had the better performance.
That's fair. That's fair. Before we head to Bryan with the man of the match discussion, Boback, you mentioned it, and I realized I skipped a topic. I also thought it was a great team performance. I thought everybody played very well. Do you give anybody on player ratings below a 7?
No.
Exactly.
I mean, one would say Adrian, but I didn't think he had a whole lot to do, and really he made one mistake and it didn't lead to a goal. So one would argue that if it were any other circumstance, say it's Matip that's running back instead of Virgil that's calling him off the ball. I mean, a lot of times you want your goalie to take charge and just go ahead and clear it out regardless of what's going on there.
Yeah.
So in some instances you might say, well, he did the right thing. But that's you'll get that when you have a goalkeeper and a defense that hasn't played more than 2 weeks together. So he escapes with a 7 for me. So yes.
Okay.
There's no one below a 7.
Bryan, you don't typically do player ratings, but does anybody get below a 7 in your mind from the match they played?
I think it's fair to give Adrian a 6.5. I mean, nothing crazy, but I understand that Boback makes a good point that his mistake, was a little bit unlucky. Nothing wrong with taking charge there. Virgil was calling him off on the ball, and after he clears it, Virgil almost kind of throws his arms up in like disgust, and it doesn't really do well when Aubameyang gets the shot off. But 6.5, 7 there. Maybe only a 6.5 for Lallana, but he only played 4 minutes, so that's a bit harsh on my part. But, we were talking about the subs at UJ. There's some people online that are Shaqiri lovers, or I don't know if they're family members of his or whatever, going absolutely berserk that he's just not getting in there. But he's not a guy that we bring on when we're winning 3-0 or I guess maybe to give somebody a rest, but we didn't really do that because we don't have another game till Saturday. So he'll get in there. It's a long season, and Milner and Oxenalana were our subs, so that makes some sense.
Yeah, and you want to see
nobody really below a 7 for me.
So who's your man of the match then, Brian?
It's got to be Salah. I mean, 2 goals, and it's hard not to pick him when he scores twice, and we win a game 3-1. So I agree on Bobby. It was dangerous all match. I think one guy that played well that was a little bit, kind of under the radar is Fabinho. He's just cleaning up messes. He played that ball first time out to Salah for that the goal where he smoked Luis.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know how he saw him.
It's Fabinho. Yeah.
I don't know how he saw him. I don't know if he took a peek and then said, "Okay, I'm going to the right wing," and got a little bit fortunate. But he zipped that ball up there first time with his. I mean, he's not even facing in that direction. It was a hell of a ball. If he had any type of forethought to try that and pull it off, it's just a great pass. So he doesn't get a honorable man of the match mention just for that. But I thought he was solid. The rest of the game as well. So. Picked up that yellow at the end, and I don't want him to start getting yellows. But, I thought he was good. Really, we had players all over the pitch playing well. So I don't think Genie and Jordan were particularly great, but, they were fine, and our front three was excellent. And the way Arsenal was playing, we really needed a midfielder. If something was going to happen from midfield, we needed someone to take somebody on and dribble past 2 or 3 guys. And Fabinho, Wijnaldum, and Jordan, that's really not their game. And that's fine. We didn't need them to do that, and we still won 3-1.
Interesting thing on Fabinho came out today that we've been scouting him for like the past 7 years. Even when he was like at was it youth at Real Madrid? It was something like that. But yeah, they've been scouting him for a long time.
I hadn't heard that. That's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm with Boback.
Who's your man of the match?
I'm with Boback, man. Bobby. I mean, he didn't score, but he was dangerous all day. His passing was great, but I think the thing that won it for me is a lot of times. When they'd be when Spurs were, when the other shitty London team Arsenal was trying to swing the other way, Bobby was back there with everybody else defending, and you don't see that from any other center forward in the league. I almost guarantee you that you do not see that from anybody else. Definitely don't see it from Kun Aguero. Jamie Vardy, maybe just because he wants to punch somebody, but you don't see that anywhere else. And so Bobby off the ball, I think, was great as well. And so I'm giving it to Bobby. It's really hard to go against Salah when he scores 2 goals, so I can't fault you there. Anybody else that you thought had a fantastic game that we haven't mentioned yet? I'm with Boback also on Joel Matip. That run back, that track back he has to stop Pepe or Aubameyang, one of the two, I forget. Is just
pretty sure it was Aubameyang,
just top notch, and wins it back. And those two are very speedy guys. It was just great to see.
You talk about the one of the first half where he was offside, or the replay showed he was offside, but
yeah,
Matip got back and blocked it. Right? Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up because I don't have to do this for an unplug now. I'm a big VAR fan, I guess you call it, and it did screw up the City penalty that Boback brought up, and it generally solves a lot more problems than it creates. But this block that Matip had on Aubameyang when he was offside, there's a problem with kind of VAR there. So they don't put the flag up, to kind of let it play out and see what happens, sort of, and he blocks the shot. It goes out for a corner. Well, they got a corner kick off of that, and he was offside. So I don't think we should have VAR to take away corner kicks necessarily. But what if
they score off that?
I guess if they score off that corner kick, I'd be screaming. But it would be better off if Matip just thumped it into his own goal for an own goal, that VAR overturned it. I mean, obviously that will never happen. But what if what if somebody gets injured on a play like that? What if they got a corner kick off of a clear offsides. If they have scored on that is something that's wrong with VAR. And I am like 99% behind VAR. I mean, I really am. People have been listening to this for a long time or know me, know that. But that's a problem with it right there, that they get a corner kick off a situation where they shouldn't have. And if they score, somebody's going to score off something like that, or someone's going to have a bad injury off a play like that shouldn't even be allowed to continue. It's going to happen, and I just hope it doesn't happen to us.
Fair point. And Chris Pajak thought the same thing. I saw him put it up on Twitter last night, and I think they might have talked about it in their review. But yeah, exactly. Well, I would have been fit to be tied. Really would have been. So, any other honorable mention players?
I've got one. If Boback doesn't, go ahead.
Yeah, Brian brought him up in regards to kind of having an underwhelming game, but I thought Genie Wijnaldum had a really good, at least second half.
Yeah,
he was very good. He started off the game a little slow. He was giving the ball away a few times, but after that, he just kind of picked up steam and was he was running the midfield there for a while. Him and Fabinho together work really well, and then when they do that, they allow Henderson the freedom to make those forward runs, and
he's dangerous. He can be dangerous when he makes those forward runs. I thought Henderson played well too. But I really liked Mane in this match. He didn't score. He didn't have a ton of chances, but it was his pressure and his constant work ethic that really unnerved Arsenal, I thought, in the defense. We talked about nobody getting a below a 7, and Mane for having a somewhat quiet game. I thought he played really well. And most of it is off the ball, too. So he gets an honorable mention from me. I interrupted. Sorry, Boback. Brian, did you have somebody else that you wanted to add?
Well, I do, but first I have to ask you, is Mane on your fantasy team?
No, he's not. I have.
Okay, good. Don't get him because you're the biggest fucking jinx ever, and he's on mine. So I don't want you to don't get him, okay? Because I think he's about to explode.
How can he be a jinx, Brian? I had Salah captained. He got 2 goals this weekend. Of course, so do about half the people.
Yeah,
in the league.
So does everybody else on the planet have Salah as captain. I mean, my dog has Salah as captain.
I cut Vardy before the match. I mean, he was still in for this week, but I cut him for the match to make weight so I could get Pookie, and he ends up scoring and gets 8 points.
The player I wanted to mention is not from our game; is from that Leicester and Sheffield game. So the suggestion that Salah's goal is a goal of the season candidate is kind of silly, in my opinion. Look up this goal from Harvey Barnes from Leicester, their second goal in the game against Sheffield. That's my favorite goal so far this season. So just wanted to throw that out there as the current goal of the season leader, Harvey Barnes from Leicester a couple days ago against Sheffield. Ridiculous.
I'll definitely have to check that one out. I have not seen it yet.
I almost want to talk with Boback for 30 seconds about something else while you find it on YouTube, watch it, and get your reaction. So
go for it.
All right, so you look it up. So we got our man of the matches there and kind of honorable mentions. So while Joe is trying to make his computer work, can we talk about
the goal itself?
Go for it. Yeah.
I want Joe to watch it first and tell us about it. So
okay, yeah, we kind of,
or at least maybe like a live reaction or something. You can go all Arsenal Fan TV if you want on this, Joe. But while he's doing that, we've got one more match before the international break. We play Burnley on Saturday. Something's happening here. It's Harvey Barnes, Joe.
Yeah, I've got it. It's the stupid ads on YouTube's.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so
right,
here they're all lined up. Here comes the ball in. A complete whiff on the header. He's over at the corner on the left side. In comes the cross. Out. Oh, what a beauty. What a hit, son. Nice. Ball falls to him, top of the box, and he first time volleys it. I mean, there's no chance for the keeper on that. That was
absolutely
great goal. Great goal.
If they show the slow motion replay, watch how far, the bottom of the net is just that kind of heavy bar, kind of weighted down thing.
Yeah.
It flies up in the air like 1.5 feet. Because he just absolutely smokes
it. It was a rocket.
Yeah, great goal.
Now they're showing Brendan Rodgers. All right, they're looking for that replay. All right, go ahead, Boback. You wanted to talk about this goal.
I don't know. You pretty much explained it. I mean, that's, for someone like that to just come onto the scene. I mean, I know he played last year for Leicester, but he wasn't really I think he's from their academy. He wasn't really well known outside of Leicester fans, but he's one to watch for me this year, and to come on and just strike that ball with such confidence and I mean, the keeper didn't even move. The keeper didn't have a chance.
It wouldn't have done any good. I mean, seriously, the speed on that ball he even has a little bit of bend in it too. Sneaks it right inside the post almost. That was beautiful, man.
I'm not even sure he's left-footed.
No,
he hit that with his left.
No, yeah, jeez. Steven Gerrard-esque. I'll go there.
Yeah, it's a hell of a strike.
Yeah, Leicester's academy, man. I mean, Madison's out of their academy too, and he's been playing pretty well as well.
Madison. They bought Madison from Norwich.
I digress. They got him from Norwich. My mistake. Joe's wrong.
Joe Barnes only been on the field for like 6 minutes when he did that. He had just come on ridiculous. 5 or 6 minutes earlier.
Ridiculous. Yeah. It's all right. Manchester United will table a bid for him in January.
It's quite possible.
You're going to put him on your fantasy team tomorrow, aren't you?
No, I'm sticking with it. Actually, I'm out of transfers for the week. So
good. So you finally got the guys that are out.
Oh no, Allison's still on the bench because we'll talk about it off air. Nobody needs to hear this.
All right.
So speaking of fantasy,
what's up next for Liverpool?
So up next for Liverpool, one more match until the international break this Saturday at Burnley. What's your take on the trip to face Sean Douche's men? And I said it that way on purpose. Boback, how are we going to do against Burnley?
I mean, that's probably my least favorite away trip. In regards to how they approach that match, they usually do a really good job of getting the worst out of us. We escaped with the result there last year, but it was definitely not pretty, and it definitely wasn't reflective of the scoreline. We had those 2 late goals late on to win. I think Shaqiri got the third. I know that off a counterattack, but it was kind of one of those games where it could have gone either way, and Burnley's actually playing pretty decent this year. Ashley Barnes is on fire. He usually gets a goal against us as well. So I mean, it's to be fair, I'm more worried about Burnley than I was with Arsenal.
And you want to end on a high note going in. You want to end on a high note going in international break. Brian, what's your take, buddy?
Well, Ashley Barnes does have 4 goals this year so far, and he's a good player. Burnley drew with Wolves opening day. They lost to Arsenal at Southampton 3-0. I think we're going to beat them 3-0 on the road. I think we're about to really click up front and not just set pieces and things like that. I think playing this team is suited well to play on the road. Not that we defend and counter, but we'll still pressure, but teams at home tend to get up the field a little bit farther. That just gives us more space to do what we want to do once we, recover the ball, whether it's Bobby nicking it off somebody or, whatever, a tackle from midfielder. I think we beat them. I think we beat them 3-0. And anyone out there that knows Dejan Lovren's Twitter account password, send it to me because I'd like to go on there and have him tweet that defending against Burnley is harder than defending against Arsenal. And I'd also like Lovren to tweet that he's the world's greatest 4th choice center back.
Oh man, I pretty much agree with Boback. It's one of those games that you kind of are like going in. You never know what to expect from Burnley. It's going to be a tough match. It's going to be a little bit of a street fight. I don't put it past Sean Dyche to say, hey, kick them a little extra. Get in their heads, maybe go hard on Bobby or Mo or Mane, to start with, and they'll quiet down or something like that. So I never like playing Burnley. I do like seeing Dave Fishwick stands. That's about the only thing I like from Burnley. And yeah, I think about that. I think we'll win. I don't do score predictions because, as Brian said, I'm a huge jinx, even though Jim did it this weekend in a different match. But anyway, yeah, I think we win. We end international break on a high note, top of the league. And then it's the international break, and I hate the September international break. I might not be the only one. It just feels like, here, you guys, you got a little taste. Now you got to wait 2 weeks. Sorry, we have to send these guys all the way around the world to play meaningless games. Anybody else want to echo any sentiments on the international break in September? And
I agree. I hate it as well.
It's completely worthless. Especially, I know they want to do this whole League of Nations or whatever, but it's completely worthless. It really is. They're not even World Cup qualifying yet. And that's going to start wrapping it up, guys. Let's go start with plugs, non-plugs. Boback has the guest. Do you have any plugs or non-plugs?
I'm I'm right there with Bryan in regards to the non-plug, but in relation to it being around VAR, my non-plug in regards to VAR is people's attitude towards it, like it's a new concept. Like, oh my God, did they actually overturn a call because it was the correct call to make? If we're gonna hear this all season, it's gonna be exhausting. Eventually, this is gonna be the norm to where we're not even gonna think about talking about VAR anymore. Like, VAR is not gonna be something that, like, if someone says VAR, we're not even gonna know what they're talking about, because it shouldn't have its own acronym. It should just literally be part of the game. And it'll eventually be the case. We're a little bit more familiar with it here in the American sports, arena.
Yeah.
In regards to being video replay as part of the game itself, and I think eventually that'll be the case. So we just kind of got to let it run its course. But I would just say the talk about VAR and the discussion over certain controversies that shouldn't actually be controversies because they're the correct call is my non-plug.
City's still bitching about that from 2 weeks ago, about their loss to Spurs, or their draw with Spurs because of VAR. They were, I mean, it was ugly on their players. Their players were bitching about it to the media. It was just stupid. It really was stupid. And they look like complete fools. Sorry, Boback, go ahead.
My plug may come as a surprise to you. Is going to be Union Jack Pub for giving us a lovely place to watch these matches on a weekly basis. And everywhere has its struggles from time to time, but Union Jack tends to overcome them as much as they can. Bryan might know a little bit what I'm talking about from this past weekend, but
I'm planning on being there this Saturday. Kids out of town, no soccer games. I'm planning on being there. Hope to see you guys. Bryan, plugs, non-plugs.
Damn. All right. Well,
are you gone, or you're just pissed that I'm going to be there?
No, I'm glad you're getting to go there. I mean, I've given you rides before there, not a whole lot because it doesn't always work out that way. But due to work or whatever it was, that's different now. So, I'm going to plug Union Jack as well, but specifically try the biscuits and gravy, the aged gravy that. They really work on it for a long time. The aged biscuits and gravy is really good. So try that out. My non-plug also has to do with VAR. This is kind of funny. I'm tired of and this is really mostly coming from the UK. People blasting VAR because it somehow hinders the celebration of a goal. We don't get to celebrate because VAR could overturn. I've thought about it. I mean, many times I'll sit and think about that 5 or 10 minutes, or hear it on a podcast, and driving home from work, trying to wrap my mind around that. It just doesn't make any sense. It's very much just like when your team earns a penalty and you go berserk, and you're thrilled that you just earned a penalty, but then your player missed it. It's the same kind of thing. You think you've scored a goal, and then no, you haven't. So when your team scores, celebrate it like you normally do. And if it was the call was wrong and the guy was offside and it's overturned, then you just get on with it. So my non-plug is for people that are blasting VAR because they don't think they get to celebrate like they normally would. Well, it wasn't a real goal. You shouldn't be celebrating. Shut the hell up. Non-plug.
Okay. I have a great take from Paul Manchin. I'm trying to find it. Yep. Here it is. My biggest fear over VAR is celebrating a goal like a fucking lunatic, like usual, and then it gets ruled out, and little do I know, I'm on some random VR pitch side camera, and some fucking 12-year-old turns my heartbreak into that week's biggest banter meme. I retweeted that from our account, and I tend to agree. Luckily, I won't be pitch side and it won't be caught on camera. But that's my only complaint with VAR, is that I'll look like a fool. So there's that. Anyway, in jest, my plug this week, I'm gonna start positive, is Crystal Palace FC going into Old Trafford, and like the first time ever beating Manchester United at Old Trafford. And also to Van Arnholt for that winning goal and giving me 10 points this week in fantasy. Thank you.
Best goalkeeper in the world.
Patrick Van Arnholt is the best goalkeeper. What are you talking about?
David De Gea.
David
De Gea, or David De Goya, David De Gea, whatever his name is. Best goalkeeper in the world.
Yeah, not looking real good for Ollie right now, some would say. That's all. I'm going to leave it at that. Non-plugs. Indianapolis Colts fans looking like complete fools. Andrew Luck is injured, and he's tired of being injured and rehabbing. In all honesty, I can't wait to hear what Pat McAfee has to say about it, because he was pretty much in the same boat when he retired. Granted, he didn't do it in the last preseason game. However, he did do it, but the lack of tact and booing a player that, granted, they've paid a lot of money. The team has paid a lot of money to, but he has done so many great things for the community and so many great things off the field, as well as given us some really good football to watch. They should be thanking him, not booing him. And I'll get off my soapbox now.
Hey,
Brian,
you know what, Joe? Sorry to interrupt.
Have a non-plug that you wanted to talk about with that too?
Well, actually, I'm going to switch it around, because I think you did a good job there. I'm not the first person to suggest this. I read it several times online today, but I did pop it in my head the other day. Andrew Luck is a soccer fan. Andrew Luck has a architecture degree from Stanford. We need a stadium here. He could design it and buy the damn thing, and there we go.
Josh Mason posted that.
I've seen it from a couple of people.
Yeah,
and obviously we don't expect him to pay for it, but I wouldn't be surprised if he stays in Indianapolis, if he doesn't get involved with the Indy 11, our local team in the USL. I wouldn't be surprised if that doesn't happen. I think that would be awesome. He doesn't have to be like a majority owner or something, but that would be really cool, and he could go back into Lucas Oil Stadium for a little bit without being booed by, a couple hundred morons or 1,000, whatever it was. Yeah. Andrew, get involved. Indy 11.
There we go. All right. Any other Latecomer Pro plugs, non-plugs? All right. And that's going to wrap it up, folks. Thank you, Boback. Thank you, Brian, for coming on. Thank you, the listeners, for checking us out. We truly do appreciate it every single time that you hit that download button, or you hit that subscribe and it automatically downloads for you. Thank you so much. If you want to get a hold of us, you can contact us via Twitter. Twitter handle is at Indy Reds Pod. Once again, that's at Indy Reds Pod. You can find us on Facebook. Just do a search for Indy Reds Podcast. Once again, that's at that's Indy Reds Podcast. You can send us an email, indyredspod@gmail.com. Once again, that's indyredspod@gmail.com. This is Joe Dilling signing off for episode 86 of the Indy Reds Podcast. You'll never walk alone.